Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Hope you're having a really good Wednesday. It's the last day of May. My youngest gets out of school Friday for the summer. My big kids are finished for the school year. And, I read something on Facebook yesterday that hit me right in the feels. It says you have 18 summers with your kids. Make them count. So I'm looking forward to a really fun summer with my three when they're here. I have teenagers, so of course they're never here. But I do have some fun things planned. Me and the girls are going to take a pottery class together. And my son and I are looking for him a new car. I want to get him something a little bit safer than what he's got now. So lots going on in my world. I want to thank everybody for your donations and also to people that have bought merch. Appreciate you guys supporting the podcast. I put donations into a little savings account. So when I need things that help me put the podcast out there, such as this new soundboard you can't see, I have it set aside and it does help me tremendously. So thank you so much. Music fact of the day, the song Criminal by Fiona Apple. Do you know how long it took her to write that song? 45 minutes. What a great song. It came on my shuffle this morning. I cranked those speakers up, just had a great time jamming out to it. She also won a Grammy for that back in 1998 for Best Female Rock Vocal Performance. Indeed it was. All right. So we do have a happy update about Nikki Alcaraz and Tyler Stratton, who she was cross country with. They were found yesterday by police in Northern California, very close to the Oregon border, by somebody who recognized them and called authorities. They were cooperative when they were stopped by police, and Tyler was arrested on that probation violation for failure to appear in Tennessee. It's unrelated to this incident. It stems from a theft charge he caught there a while back. But before they were found, there was hope that Nikki was okay because she was seen this past Saturday at a Walmart in Redding, California, selling her phone at a digital kiosk. Now, Brian Enton spoke to her brother before she was found, saying that this worried him because he couldn't think of any reason that she would want to sell her cell phone and was worried that she was under Tyler's control. He also was worried maybe she had suffered a head injury when she was punched by Tyler. Now, Torrance County, New Mexico sheriff told Brian Enton that there probably should have been an arrest when that domestic happened. There was a truck driver who stopped to render aid to Nikki after he saw Nikki getting punched. But the DA frowns on such arrests, which I don't know about you guys, but that really makes me mad. I don't know why any DA would frown on anybody being arrested for being violent towards another person. It's such an epidemic in this country, domestic violence. We see it all the time here. We need to start holding those accountable who beat their partners, men or women, it doesn't matter. And when you have DAs who frown on such arrests, things like this slide, and then sometimes the end result is this podcast and news headlines. We've got to change the narrative and we've got to start holding people accountable when we know there's violence in relationships. It is just such a problem and it's sad. Let's go through the incident report from when they were pulled over. It says on May the 4th, while on patrol, Torrance County units were dispatched to Interstate 40, mile marker 224 in reference to a welfare check. Torrance County dispatch advised they heard a female on the line screaming and then will not answer. Torrance County dispatch also advised the female may be outside a vehicle as they hear vehicle traffic going by. While en route to the area, Torrance County dispatch received a telephone call from a truck driver who was passing by and noticed a possible domestic between a male and a female. Upon arrival, I noted a black Jeep parked in a small rest area pullout. I noticed a male subject in a red sweater sitting on the ground just south of the Jeep. I also noticed another male and female standing just west of the Jeep. The male stated that he had called in. I asked the female what happened, and she told the male to state what he saw. The male was identified as Jordan Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton stated that he was driving by when he noticed the female sitting on the ground with the male over her, and he punched her in the face. I asked Mr. Hamilton to assist in taking the male in the red sweater into detention. The male was taken into custody and placed in the back of my patrol unit. I noticed the male had blood coming from his mouth and nose area. Mr. Hamilton asked if he could leave, and I advised him yes and thanked him for his assistance. We just need to talk about Mr. Hamilton in that he didn't know what he was walking into. Obviously, it was a violent incident, and he stopped anyway. And people like that can save lives, y'all. So the report goes on to say, I asked the female for her ID, and she opened the driver's door on the Jeep and handed me her driver's license. I also noticed the driver's seat was set in a position for a smaller person. The back of the seat was close to the steering wheel. The female was identified as Nikki Alcaraz. Miss Alcaraz stated they had dropped off a friend whose name was not given in Amarillo, Texas. Miss Alcaraz stated that they picked up a bottle of Fireball and they both started to drink. Miss Alcaraz stated she was not driving and was sitting in the passenger seat. Miss Alcaraz stated that Thomas started to hit her for no reason. Miss Alcaraz stated when they got to the rest area, she jumped out of the vehicle and Thomas caught her. Miss Alcaraz stated she wanted to press charges. Upon checking Miss Alcaraz, I was able to notice red marks on her face and fingerprint marks on both arms. Miss Alcaraz also stated she had a bruise on her chest and her back. Spoke with Mr. Stephen Stratton, who stated they were traveling to California. Mr. Stratton stated they both had been drinking beer and Fireball and that Nikki was driving. Mr. Stratton then stated that Nikki hit him in the mouth for no reason. Mr. Stratton stated that as they were traveling west on I-40, she continued to hit him. Mr. Stratton also stated that Nikki does blackouts after drinking liquor. Mr. Stratton stated that they stopped several miles back and Nikki was on the phone with the windows open. Mr. Stratton also stated he did not want Nikki to go to jail. Additional sheriff units arrived and medical units arrived on scene. Torrance County Rescue checked subjects and advised Mr. Stratton that he needed to go in due to his blood pressure being high. Mr. Stratton stated that he did not want to go to the hospital, probably for two reasons. Number one, he had a warrant for his arrest. Number two, I think they both were afraid of getting a DUI. Deputies spoke with both subjects again, and neither one would admit to driving the vehicle, and they were both intoxicated. Mr. Stratton and Ms. Alcaraz stated they did not want to assist with any charges being filed. Both subjects were giving a ride from the scene, and we know she was taken to one location. Mr. Stratton, he was dropped off in another location in New Mexico. Once Ms. Alcaraz was off the scene, I photographed the vehicle and noticed the driver's seat to have been pushed back to indicate a taller person was driving. I noticed numerous blood spatter on the passenger side door, which would have come from Mr. Stratton, since he was the only one with visible blood on his face. I also noticed blood on the running board. It was determined that both parties were mutual combatants while traveling down the interstate. The bruise on Miss Alcaraz's arms came from Mr. Stratton holding her down to avoid being hit. So the good news is she's alive. She's well. I hope she is being reunited with family. Brian Enton tweeted out last night she had made contact with family. So I hope there's a reunion today. Hopefully in the future, Nikki does not enter back into a relationship with Tyler. It's clear this is very toxic on a lot of levels. So at least we have a happy ending. All right, so moving on. Nate Eaton, one of the OGs in the Lori Vallow case, he has posted a new interview with Saul, the deliberating juror whose interview with Nate was used as one of the three reasons that Lori Vallow should have a new trial. Saul said that the jury instructions were not confusing to him, and they were given a written copy to use as reference if they did get confused. In the interview, Nate actually cuts back and inserts a clip of the previous interview where Saul talked about Charles's murder and questions if things had been done differently, would they even be here now? He said they did not consider this during deliberations because the instructions were clear and the jurors were respectful of that while deliberating. He says after being removed from that, meaning the trial, the verdict's over, the police in Arizona had some significant red flags had they been followed up on, and maybe we're not here. That's what he said in the original interview. Nate said that he was referring to body cam footage of Charles, which was not entered into evidence in Lori's trial, and asked Saul how he knew of it. Saul said once they were released from the court that Friday, that the verdict came down. As you can imagine, most people on that jury would have questions. They weren't allowed to research anything as we know about the case while it was going on. So that Sunday, he and his wife watched the Dateline about the case. Remember, that Dateline aired that night. That verdict came down. It was a 2-hour episode. It dove into things that this jury did not see during the course of the trial. He said he was intrigued. He then learned in Arizona had footage of Charles where we've all seen it, where he's telling the police Lori's deemed him a zombie. And he said to him that was a significant red flag that something wasn't normal. And it should have been followed up on by investigators in Chandler, Arizona. So Nate reiterates the verdict was on a Friday. Saul and his wife watched Dateline on a Sunday, and he did not interview Saul until Wednesday. So it's totally safe to assume that a lot of these jurors probably went home and researched this case. They had to have known there was way more to the story than what was coming in. And I would be surprised if any of the jurors have not researched something at this point. He said he learned about the motion last Friday and wasn't surprised because the defense said during the trial that they had planned to file for a new trial or appeal. He was surprised their interview was part of the reason that they asked for a new trial. He made very clear to Nate, though, and this is the most important part, he did not know about the body cam footage until he watched that Dateline 2 days after they were released by the judge. He said his fellow jurors were fair and honest to the whole process. Now, moving on, but still talking Lori Vallow, Kresha Easton, who I just adore. I love Kresha. She is JJ Vallow's aunt, Charles Vallow's niece, and also Kay Woodcock's daughter. She talked to the U.S. Sun about a chance meeting in Vegas with Lori and Charles way back in 2011. And she also shared her thoughts on Lori and the trial. There's some new pictures here on the screen that were accompanying this interview. So I put those up, really cute pictures of JJ with Mama and Papa. And very weird to see Kresha with Lori in the background. Just, it has to be so surreal. And I can't imagine knowing somebody and having them in your family for years. And then you think you know them, but you never really did. Talking about the Lori she knew when times are good, Kresha said she hasn't looked like the Lori that I once knew since she walked into that courtroom in Rexburg for the first time in March of 2020. When she walked into the room with her shoulders back, confident, she had pep in her step. She was looking down on everyone. Her demeanor didn't match the severity of the situation. She should not be that confident. She used to be warm and inviting back then, and when you'd talk to her, she'd be engaged. She just lit up the room and kind of almost sucked all the oxygen out, but she's different now. She was warm and loving and funny, very funny, and she was pretty and her personality matched it. That's rare, you know? But then you look back and all these things just come out of the closet and you're like, oh God, there's a Satan in my family. Speaking of the woman Lori has become and weighing in on Chad, Kresha said, they're the zombies. They're just carcasses. They're not there anymore. They're gone. I didn't know Chad before, but he didn't really seem to have too much up there, but that's not for me to decide. I'm going to second that emotion there, Kresha. But I can speak to Lori and she's gone. She's gone. They're projecting onto everybody what they really see about themselves or what they feel like inside. It's just crazy. Kresha also shared her feelings about how the situation with Charles was handled by law enforcement in Arizona, saying, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. I'm angry. Just as angry as I am with the Chandler Police Department, I feel so bad for my uncle because he was just dismissed time and time and time again. This meeting in 2011, they just all happened to be in Vegas and bumped into each other. I love the picture of Charles. He just looks so happy to have Kresha there hugging him in that photo. And speaking of the trials, Kresha said, when this is done, I'm not letting Lori and Chad steal any more from my life. I don't have any control over how Lori feels or whether she will come to terms with what she's done and if she regrets it. And even with a guilty verdict, there are no winners in this. It doesn't breathe life back into the victims. I wish it did, but you can't go back. They have stolen enough, and time continues to be a thief. It continues to take and take. I can't wait to close, even if there is such a thing, this chapter. Kresha said JJ was a shining light in this world. Summer is around the corner, and living in the humid South, I find myself wearing less makeup to let my skin breathe easy, but I still want a little coverage. Kosas has me covered, literally. Kosas makes clean makeup for people who take their skincare seriously. Their complexion products are actually proven to make your skin better and are dermatologist tested, safe for sensitive and acne-prone skin, and hypoallergenic. Kosas Revealer Concealer. It's not your mom's concealer. It's super creamy, weightless, and it's a total multitasker. It's a concealer, eye cream, and spot treatment in one. Millions of people have tried Kosas, making it one of the best-selling makeup collections at Sephora. So don't choose between wearing great makeup and taking care of your skin. Right now, Kosas is offering my listeners 15% off your first purchase of $50 or more when you go to kosas.com/whattheworld. Go to Kosas, KOSAS.com/whattheworld for 15% off your first purchase of $50 or more, plus free shipping. That's kosas.com/whattheworld. I've been on the road covering trials for 12 weeks so far this year, and Base has made my travel so much easier. It's an overpacker's dream. It can be hard to fit everything in, especially when it comes to luggage, but with Base, there's room for everything. Base was created by actress Shay Mitchell to make sleek and affordable bags, luggage, and accessories designed to help you travel effortlessly while still looking fashionable. Base has thought of everything you could ever want in a piece of luggage. 360-degree gliding wheels, a cushion handle, a built-in weight indicator that has saved me from last-minute overweight luggage fees and scrambling to balance weight between my bags. We've all been there. It also has washable bags for your dirty clothes and all the interior pockets you need to keep organized. Their luggage comes in multiple sizes and colors, and for shorter trips, the Weekender bag is super functional. It even has a place to store your shoes separately. I can see why Base has over 30,000 five-star reviews, one of those from me. Right now, Base is offering my listeners 15% off your first purchase by visiting basetravel.com/whattheworld. Go to basetravel.com/whattheworld for 15% off your first purchase. That's Base, BEIS travel.com/whattheworld. A little update, and this happened while I was in Idaho, the announcement. I'll link the original episode about Gavin Knupp's story in the description, but 22-year-old Tyler Mayu has been arrested in the hit-and-run death of 14-year-old Gavin Knupp, which happened on July 11th of last year in Ocean Pines, Maryland. Gavin was struck and killed by a black Mercedes-Benz after he got out of his sister's car to look at a taxidermy deer head that was on the side of Gray's Corner Road in Berlin. And unfortunately, he was hit while returning back to the car. His sister, bless her heart, tried to revive him, but he was pronounced dead at the hospital that evening. Now, I did an episode on this a few months ago where we kind of dived into it. I was not able to name Tyler because he had not been named by law enforcement. I don't want to get sued, but he is facing 17 charges. 4 of those are felonies, and 2 of those felonies have a possible 10-year sentence. All the charges hold jail time as well as fines, but all of these charges are traffic related. Some of those charges are failure to immediately stop the vehicle at the scene of an accident involving bodily injury, knew the accident may result in serious bodily injury, and then another of the same, except knowing the accident may result in death, failure to immediately return to the scene of an accident involving bodily injury, involving death, failure to report the accident to police. He was set to have his initial appearance today, but it was vacated. And it could be that his attorneys entered the appearance on Tyler's behalf. He won't be in court again until August 16th, and a jury trial is set to begin on September 11th. I think it's going to take 4 to 5 days for that. And this community really rallied around the Knupp family in a huge way. There was a local businessman, Ralph, I hope I'm saying this right, DeAngelis. He was a co-owner of a lot of different restaurant establishments there in Ocean City. And here's the kicker. He was dating Tyler's mother, and this car was found inside his garage and taken from his garage. So the community started to boycott these restaurants and establishments. And when I did the original episode, I put up a picture of all the signs that were supporting the family. And so if I ever make it up to Ocean City, Maryland for this trial, I'm going to check out one of those places. But the community felt this was a cover up because of his standing in the community and being the boyfriend of Tyler's mom, that maybe this was being put away. I'm so glad there was an arrest because it's just tragic what happened to Gavin. He should be here. Just man, what a cute kid. Just look at that face. Seemed like from everything I've heard about Gavin, he enjoyed every minute and lived it to the fullest. And I know that the arrest is relief for his family, but like Kresha Easton just said in the U.S. Sun interview, it doesn't breathe life back into these victims. And justice is what we hope for. All right, moving on. Today is the first day of jury selection for Parkland's school resource officer, Scot Peterson, not Scot Peterson in California, prison Scot Peterson. This is in Florida. 5 years ago, as we know, unfortunately, Nicholas Cruz opened fire, killing 17 at the school. 14 were students. 3 of those were staff members. Peterson has been given the name the Coward of Broward by locals. He was armed at the time, did not engage the gunman. So he's charged with 7 counts of child neglect and 3 counts of culpable negligence for the 10 people Nicholas Cruz shot on the 3rd floor, 6 of those who died. Now, Peterson's also charged with perjury for lying to investigators. He did not face charges for the 11 that were killed and 13 wounded on the 1st floor of the school prior to his arrival on scene. He is the first police officer charged for not acting during a school shooting in the entire country. The charges are related to someone in a caregiver role. His attorneys say that law enforcement officers do not fit the legal definition of a caregiver, while the state says that school resource officers are different from other law enforcement officers and should be considered caregivers. I completely agree. You are working in a school to prevent violence, and when it breaks out, you become a caregiver of all those kids in that school. Back in March, his defense said the jury needs to be read instructions on defining what a caregiver is, saying, quote, the best definition that they're given is caregiver means a parent, adult household member, or other person responsible for the child's welfare. Well, what does that mean? Does that include the janitor who, for the welfare of the kids, cleans a bathroom? How far does that go? Well, honestly, let's just say that an SRO's job is to make sure the kids are safe in a school. I have worked with a lot of SROs when I worked at the high school. They're great. They would have ran towards gunfire to save one student. This guy did the opposite. He hid. That motion was denied, with the judge saying that the jury themselves can decide if Peterson should be considered a caregiver, and that jury instructions would include something to that effect. However, the judge did note that in the past, Florida courts have deemed caregivers as babysitters, landlords, and even kidnappers. So good luck, Peterson. If the jury finds that Peterson was in fact a caregiver, then they must determine whether he made a reasonable effort to protect the children or failed to provide the care necessary to maintain their health. The judge did grant the defense the ability to allow potential jurors to fill out a questionnaire about their media exposure to the case. His defense has also argued that Cruz had a much more powerful firearm and Peterson would have risked his life in pursuing him. Y'all, look, here's the thing. We've unfortunately seen way too many videos of police officers running into an active shooter situation to save lives. That's why this officer was stationed at this school, in my opinion. Peterson is seen on video 36 seconds after Nicholas Cruz opened fire, getting onto a golf cart with 2 unarmed civilian security guards, arriving at the building less than a minute later. He was on the opposite side of the building as Cruz was during the attack. Now, Peterson had his gun drawn for 73 seconds before Cruz reached the 3rd floor. But instead of entering, he backed away as gunfire rang out. He didn't attempt to enter the school and took cover in an alcove of a neighboring building for, guess how long? 48 minutes. His gun was drawn the whole time. He told investigators that he heard 2 to 3 shots, but the other unarmed security guards said that they heard way more than that. And it was clear to them that the shots were coming from inside the school. Now, Cruz would go on to fire over 70 shots over the course of 4 minutes while Peterson is hiding. The state said Peterson knew the shots were coming from inside the building and could have stopped some of the shootings if he had done his job and confronted Nicholas Cruz. Peterson radioed to arriving officers to stay clear of the building, and he also says he did not notice when bullets were breaking windows about 70 feet from where he was standing. He said he thought the shots were coming from outside, thinking maybe there was a sniper in a tree. Really? I don't know how you can hear shots up above. It's not going to sound as crisp as a gunshot outside. You're going to hear some muffling from him being inside. It's just really bad excuses that cost kids their lives. He resigned shortly after the school shooting and moved to North Carolina. He was retroactively fired and then charged a year later. Back in August of 2021, Peterson said, "There's no way that I would sit there and allow those kids to die with me being next to another building and sitting there. No way. And anybody who knows me would tell you that's not Deputy Peterson." Well, Deputy Peterson, apparently surveillance and eyewitnesses say otherwise. One parent called him a coward and said that he wouldn't have gone in with full body armor and a bazooka. He's completed 3 courses regarding active shooter situations over the years, which, you know what? They teach you what to do when there's an active shooter. A lot of legal analysts think that he will take the stand in his own defense to give his side of the story. The trial is expected to last into August with about 60 to 80 witnesses set to take the stand. In Florida, the jury is made up of 6 jurors and up to 4 alternates. Nicholas Cruz, by the way, as we know, was sentenced to life in prison after the jury could not decide on the death penalty. He is now 24 years old and just so many victims. It's unfathomable, y'all. These are the faces of the victims. If you're on YouTube, just unbelievable. All right, so moving on to a local case for me. 44-year-old Casey Young is missing here in the upstate of South Carolina. She was last seen on May 15th at 4:30 p.m. leaving work and was presumed to be driving to her home in Boiling Springs, South Carolina. It's about a 20-minute drive from her work in Spartanburg. She was wearing scrub pants and a gray Spartanburg Regional Hospital t-shirt. Her car has been located, but authorities are not saying where the car was found or anything about the circumstances surrounding the car. If you see her, please call Lieutenant Brandon Letterman at 864-494-0644. And while we are talking about missing women from the upstate, just a reminder, Alexis Ware is also missing from here. She went missing on January 30th of last year. There's been no news, y'all, nothing. Radio silence other than the police saying that the father of her son is not a person of interest. There is a $5,000 reward, and anyone with information is asked to call 1-888-CRIME-SC. Lastly, look who's back on our screen, Alec Murdaugh. He's pled not guilty to the 22-count federal indictment against him, but his attorneys say they expect him to change his plea in the future, and a plea deal is kind of being hammered out. Just last week, his attorneys told Daily Mail they expect the case to be resolved swiftly and without trial. For these 22 charges, he's facing 480 years in prison and $13 million in fines. Now, what in the world is he going to do without his cups of soup and his beef sticks? He's going to have to get crafty because they will dock whatever money is given to him to pay back restitution. I wonder how this works. I'm not an attorney. I don't know. Maybe a smart attorney like Scott Reich can shed some light on this, but a camp cupcake for him, would that be an option with him being a convicted double murderer? But what are the benefits of spending your life in a state prison versus federal? Well, federal obviously is where you want to be. It's better security, less prisoners, less violent offenders, And also, you can be sent to different states in federal prison to where if you're in state prison, you just move within the state. So that's all I have for you guys. If you're in the upstate of South Carolina or anywhere near the upstate of South Carolina, be sure to keep an eye out for Casey Young. Let's hope that there is a happy ending with this, just like there was with Nikki Alcaraz yesterday being found alive and hopefully being reunited with her family. Also, Alexis Ware still missing with really no news whatsoever for over a year. Very scary stuff. I will catch you tomorrow, most likely beginning the Letitia Stout trial. Wish me luck with that one. All right, we'll see you soon.